Welcome to Fleet Safety Geeks. I'm Bob.
And I'm Phil, and we welcome you to our podcast.
Welcome back to another episode of Fleet Safety Geeks. I'm Bob Mossing, and I'm here with Phil Mosier. Phil, how are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Bob? Good to see you.
Yeah, I'm doing well too. Thanks. We also have special guest Steve Kiefer from the Kiefer Foundation. Steve, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, Bob, and great to see both of you, Bob and Phil. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thank you. I think Phil met you at the excuse me Nets conference in Ann Arbor. Phil, do you have anything to say about that conference?
Yeah, Steve was one of the keynote presenters at the Nets conference, and his message is very impactful. It's very important. And Bob, as we always say, we talk about driver distraction, and we will continue to talk about it and talk about it and talk about it. We just have to keep beating this drum because it's an issue. It's one of the major issues on our highways, and Steve has a great message that he can share with us here. Which, Steve, I just appreciate you taking the time to be on here with us.
Thank you both for spending so much time talking about the dangers and the importance of highway safety, and specifically distracted driving. And it's obviously an issue that's near and dear to my heart and my family's heart. And I'll tell you more about it here in just a minute after we get through the intros here.
Yeah, no, that's great. Excuse me again. Phil has said this a number of times, and Steve, I think that you support this, and this is a big part of your mission. But um, Phil has said, um, when drinking and driving was a big problem on our roads, everybody addressed it. MAD got involved, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, harsh penalties were out there, loss of license, everything was thrown at it to really make drinking and driving um, um, something that's no longer a social norm. We have similar problems on the road today with people using their cell phones and other distractions, causing a lot of crashes out there, and people are getting injured and worse. And I think that you do a big part, and you'll probably talk more about this, about trying to get legislation passed to have distracted driving laws. Where do you see that as far as what you think needs to be done to have harsher penalties for distracted driving?
Yeah, well, let me just start with just a little bit of background information for your listeners, because I just want to make sure we set the context right. So I know you've been talking about distracted driving for quite a while. I've been talking for about the issue for about 6 years. So it was 6 years ago in September that my son Mitchell was killed by a distracted driver. He was in his first month at university at Michigan State University. He was driving up on a beautiful Monday morning, and traffic slowed down, and unfortunately the young lady behind him on her phone did not slow down, and she hit Mitchell's car and drove him across a very narrow grass median into oncoming traffic, where he was hit by a truck and killed instantly. And it's such a horrific thing to go through. And one of the first questions I ask people is, why does it have to happen to you? Why does it have to happen to your family before you change behavior? Because of course my behavior and my family's behavior has changed significantly. The other thing that we, quickly learned is that you think this is such a freak accident, and then you start to do the research as you gentlemen have done, and you see that it's a very common occurrence. The stats are horrendous. Well over 40,000 people killed on the highways of the U.S. Last year. It's getting worse this year. The stats say that 10 people every day are killed by distracted drivers, but we all know that the stats are way underreported. So we know that the numbers probably closer to 50, and it's hard to substantiate, but law enforcement, insurance agencies know that the number is much larger. So you think about a problem that's killing 50 people every day, you would think that it would get a lot of traction and a lot of attention. Now, as you said, in the 80s and 90s, I think people recognized the dangers of impaired or drunk driving. Laws were changed. Mothers Against Drunk Drivers were very active in the courtrooms to make sure that stiff penalties were enforced, and slowly over time, behavior changed. It's not perfect yet, but I think most young people would say they wouldn't get in the car after drinking. Everybody realizes that not only is it dangerous, but it's also a social stigma. I mean, people just know that you don't want to be seen as somebody drinking and driving. Yet here we are talking about distracted driving, and all the data would say that it's every bit, if not more, dangerous than drunk driving. The fact of the matter is, when you look at a text, it takes about 5 seconds to process that information. And in those 5 seconds at highway speeds, you're basically blindfolded. And you've all seen, and your listeners have all seen, just how bad people are driving when they've got their eyes looking down at their phone rather than up at the road. So we know that it's extremely dangerous. The stats are just horrendous, and it's happening to people every day. So you talked a little bit about legislation. Our focus is at Kiefer Foundation is three pillars: one of awareness, one of technology, and one of legislation. Awareness is things just like we're doing right now, talking about the issue and making sure everybody understands it. And as painful as it is for us to tell the story for all of the victims' families, we know by telling the story, hopefully it will make people understand, and that will create awareness. Of course, there's many other ways: social media, billboards, activities in schools that we've been doing to help with the awareness issue. Technology, I think let's hold that discussion up, because I think you gentlemen have some ideas, and we have some ideas as well we can talk about on technology. But the legislative piece, it's a long way of getting to your question. The legislative piece, I think, is very interesting, because I do think it's very analogous to drunk driving. I think we believe that if there were stiff laws for driving while using the cell phone, we think that it could follow the path of impaired driving and eventually change behavior. So we have a program across the country called Hands Free USA, and in each state, for example, in my home state, it's referred to as Hands Free Michigan. These are a set of bills that basically make it illegal to hold the phone while you're driving an automobile. So it's acceptable to use it in a hands-free mode through Bluetooth, put away in a console. But if you're holding a phone while driving a car, it becomes a primary offense, and you can be pulled over, ticketed, and fined. So those laws, of course, in every developed country around the world, by the way, that's commonplace. You wouldn't think about holding your phone while driving a car in Europe, for example. Yet here in the States, we don't have laws across all the states. These hands-free laws have been implemented in 24 states in the U.S. In each of those states, the crashes have been reduced, the fatalities have been reduced. In many cases, insurance rates are reduced. So there's a lot of good that comes from these bills. Unfortunately, we have to do it state by state, and in every state, there's some people and some groups that will oppose these things. And the legislative process is really broken in this country, and broken in most of the states. So unfortunately, we're fighting in every state right now to get these bills passed. Our goal is to have hands-free USA, so good, enforceable, effective hands-free laws in every state in the country. And we think with that, we can really start to change behavior.
Steve, I know you and I have had a conversation regarding the use of hands-free devices, what I like is that if they're not holding the phone, then they're not going to be texting and tweeting and emailing and things like that, which is so dangerous. So every study that's been done is if you're doing anything alphanumeric, you are 23 times more likely to crash. Not 23%, 23 times more likely to crash. That is the proverbial, it's not a matter of if, it's when. I think that the hands-free laws are a step in the right direction, and I mean, I would love to see total ban across the entire world. As not hands-free, not handset, nothing. Just put the damn thing away, so that and drive. That's what your focus has to be on, is just driving. So I appreciate all that you're doing, what the Kiefer Foundation is doing. And I just want to say again, I know I've had this conversation with you. I am so sincerely sorry for your loss of your son. I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm so glad that you're out here spreading this message, because it's so important. And this is happening every day. Families are being affected like this every day, every hour of every day. And you think about that, it's just ridiculous. We need to do better. We need to do better. So thanks for what you're doing. And again, it's really a pleasure getting to know you.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And as you notice, I'm wearing this Just Drive logo. And if you go to our website, you'll see this whole Just Drive initiative. It was kicked off a year ago on the 4th of July weekend by our good friend Tom Brady. And basically the message is quite simple. When you're behind the wheel, put down the phone and just drive. And you're exactly right. I mean, the experts in this area will tell you that even, hands-free, when you're having a conversation with both hands on the wheel looking at the road, the cognitive distraction is almost as bad as looking at the phone. So we know that when people are absorbed in a conversation,
Right.
even hands free, that it's quite dangerous. But as you pointed out, I mean, as
Right.
difficult as it has been to get legislation passed in these 24 states to just eliminate the ability to hold the phone, imagine trying to go the next level and have it, completely, no use of the phone.
Right.
So
That's
it
exactly
is
right.
unfortunately a one step at a time. But I do think that if we could get people to not be looking at the phones, I think that would go a long way. And again, as I said, the data confirms it. We have data in all 24 of the states that have adopted these laws, and they work. I mean, not perfect, but they work. And every life that we can save is certainly important.
We had an episode on where Tasha Hairston Springs was on, and she shared her story about how she was involved in an accident where she was using her phone. And she talks a lot about how people are addicted to their phones. So it's a very good point that we need to start with the legislation to put the phones down, and that's a great start. The next step is put the phone away. On that episode, we also had somebody talking about technology that's available that disables the phone, except for certain apps that are allowed, like music and navigation. So um, we can talk more about technology. I just want to add my condolences and but also thank you for what you're doing to keep our roads safe. Um, I will share that I'm teaching my daughter how to drive, and my son's next. And the first thing I have them do is get in the car, put on the seatbelt, adjust the mirrors, and put their phone in the glove box. So um, they seem to understand that, and they both love using their phones. So it's going to be a challenge. So, but again, I really respect what you're doing, and thank you for that.
I appreciate the condolences, and we just feel as a family that when you lose somebody, you got to decide what are you gonna do? Are you gonna let it destroy your life, or are you gonna do something to honor Mitchel's young life? And Mitchell always wanted to change the world, so we always say every day we're changing the world on his behalf, and we know he's helping us from a better place. So,
That's right.
back on the technology points that you made, we did try to get a national "Do Not Drive Distracted" Day. It was October 20th last month, and had a pretty good turnout. It was the first annual, but basically it was encourage everyone to use the tools that you just mentioned. Do not disturb mode on your Apple phone. I think it's called Safe Drive on the Android phones. But all the operating systems have them. They can block incoming calls and allow people to not be disturbed while they're driving, which is very important. I think even more important is it sends an automated text to the person who has reached out and says, "Hey, I'm driving. Please, I'll get back to you when I'm in a safe place." And I think that message is really important. I mean, not just that they see that someone's going to call them back later, but that people are really taking this serious. And you can personalize the message. Of course, I personalize mine will help us bring an end to distracted driving. So I think those are really good basic tools that everybody has at their disposal right now if they for some reason can't just completely put away the phone. And there's one other I wanted to mention because I've really been promoting the Safe Drive apps. We have a partner at our foundation called Cambridge Mobile Telematics. They produce the app that's the backbone to about 15 of the insurance companies' safe driving apps. And you all see the commercials, but I don't know how much people really are paying attention to what these commercials are saying. Basically, my insurance company, if you download this app on your phone, they give you a 5% discount on your insurance. If you get your whole family to do it, they give you a 10% discount. And if you show 90 a score of 90 or better, you get a further reduction in your insurance rates. So it's this instead of a negative enforcement of legislation, which we will continue to do and make sure that's in place, this positive reinforcement of a significant savings in your insurance rates by having this app turned on your phone is really a great incentive for people. And we're just encouraging everyone to use them because I think every major insurance company now offers those discounts. It's a very simple app. It's constantly monitoring how you're driving. It looks at hard braking, hard accelerations. It looks at phone use and it looks at speeding and basically gives you a score. So it's that too is addictive. I find that once you turn that on, and it's got a bit of a social aspect to it, so you share it with your family members and all your friends. People start competing for higher scores, And it's really starting to, it really has a potential, I think, to change behavior significantly. So we're encouraging that as another readily available piece of technology for people to use.
I like what you're saying is that you have the the
Like that.
the 3 pillar approach to reducing distraction, which I think is spot on. There is no one silver bullet. It has to be many different methods to get people to get off the phones while they're driving. And I always say it should become a stigma, just like impaired driving is. People say, oh, if you got arrested for drunk driving, that's kind of a stigma. People go, oh, you got arrested for drunk driving. Well, that should be the same thing for phone use and distraction. And I know that in previous conversations, and I think you may have even used the analogy when you did your presentation at NETS. I think you compared it to smoking on an airplane. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yeah, there's a section in my presentation that you're referring to that's all about changing behavior, and I think behavior has changed as it's related to drunk driving. But the other example that we use is smoking in public places, and there's a picture in my presentation that shows the smoking section of an airplane. So
Right.
people of my age will remember the day when there was a smoking section and a non-smoking section on airplanes, and people there was nothing thought inappropriate about it. Imagine today you're sitting on a plane and you light up a cigarette. I mean, the whole plane would be there'd be an uproar, right? So we've changed that
Right.
behavior completely, and not just that. I would say in public places, in restaurants, or in offices.
Right.
I mean that has changed really quite quickly. I'm also smiling because I'm remembering there's an ad that I always use in the presentation that it's an ad
Mhm.
from the 50s, and it's real. It's a Winston cigarette ad, and it shows a pregnant woman smoking a cigarette. And the caption roughly says this: it says, "People are always talking about smoking while pregnant having an impact on the weight of your baby." She says, "Talk about a win-win-win: a small baby, an easy labor, and the great taste of Winston." And I mean, that was real in the 50s. Is smoke
That's
cigarettes and had small
amazing.
babies, and we laugh about it now. So I dream of, and by the way, I feel things happen at lightning pace these days. So I dream that we can do everything we did for drunk driving or smoking in a much shorter period of time with social media. Things go viral quickly, and behaviors and information travels much more quickly these days. So I'm hoping 5 years from now, people are saying, "I can't believe that they let you look at a phone in a car when you were driving." I mean, it's just insane. You'd never consider that. That's what we have to get to. I also show a slide in my presentation that has a young lady holding her phone, and it animates into a gun. And I say it because I was trying to get to, this is me at a traffic light. When I look over and I see somebody on their phone, it's visceral. I mean, I get anxious, and I just feel like you're sitting stopped safely at a red light. You think you're looking at a phone, and you think that that's okay. And for me, it's like you're going to kill somebody. I mean, it's just it's that dramatic for me. Now it's that way because I lost my son. So how do I get everyone else on the road to feel the same way? And that's Phil. That's your. I can feel it in the emotion in your comments. That's what we have to do. We've got to make everyone feel just as indignant about how horrible this is.
And Steve, I think when we had that conversation, and that's you did hand me this, you gave me this, and one of the things I learned about myself is that when I do see people doing what I call knucklehead moves behind the wheel, including using the phone and everything, my attention is drawn to them, and then that's actually creating a distraction for me. So I've had to learn to let it go. And you said you gave me that, and you said hold this up, and that is a great approach, I think. So when I see that knucklehead on the phone, I'm just going, hey, just drive, and it's not offensive. It's not creating that road rage situation. It's like just drive, hang up the darn phone, and it's a fantastic message.
I appreciate that. We originally introduced it. We were at a conference in Mackinac Island in northern Michigan in a hot summer period. It was a legislative conference, and we came up with this idea that people could use hand fans. So that's officially what this is. But we know how people use them, and I'm glad you mentioned road rage, because I think showing this to someone, I think people get it. Some people are still quite offended by it, but it's much better than some of the hand gestures that are often used when you're trying to call somebody out for bad
Exactly.
behavior. Well, on the behavior piece, though, also, and by the way, with mine, I lodge mine in my passenger window, so people see it, and I can just kind of look at them and look at it and hope that they get the idea. But everyone's got to handle it in their own way. But back to this awareness thing, it's another really amazing stat to me is when we poll people, 90 to 95% of people know that holding the phone, using the phone, they know it's dangerous behavior. I mean, even life-threatening behavior. But then when you poll them and ask if they do it, some 85% say, "Yeah, occasionally I still do it." And and people are embarrassed
Yep.
about it. I mean, but that's not enough, right? I mean, being embarrassed about it isn't enough. We've got to make it so bad that people just wouldn't even dream of doing it, and hopefully we'll save lives.
Yeah, no, they need to be more than embarrassed. We need to make this something that is just where you said in a few years, hopefully people will just be like, I'm amazed that anybody ever did that. That's where we need to be. And I think the problem is, with the addictions that we have to these phones, they just need to automatically get disabled when the car's in motion. That's just seems to be the way that it should work to me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's right, and I really appreciate your audience, and I really enjoyed. It was my first time going to this Nets conference, but it's really great to see a subset of people that are say highway users that are the fleet owners and fleet drivers. It's really a great subpopulation to be focused on here because I do think that hopefully, mostly they're the safest drivers out there. I believe they're not only because their companies demand it, but I mean I just think that there's it's an easier path to change behavior because people are driving for a living, and the owners of the fleets have a right to tell them that you can't use a phone while you're driving, or have a right to maybe monitor their behavior with the in-vehicle cameras. I know it's a bit of a controversial topic, but there's a lot of great technology out there with driver monitoring that's actually in production for some vehicles that are using it for some semi-autonomous behavior, like the Cadillac Escalade with Super Cruise uses this in-vehicle camera monitoring that looks where your eyes are and alerts drivers when they're deviating from looking away from the road. These technologies also readily available and obviously are finding their way into fleets first, but I think we'll see it more and more across the whole new car fleet, which I think would be really great for highway safety.
No, it's a good point. Phil and I are in the fleet industry, so it makes sense that we're going to focus on our fleet drivers. I manage a fleet of a large fleet with a lot of drivers. I feel that I'm responsible for their safety, the vehicle I put them in, the policies that I, create to keep them safe, and then the enforcement, on that. So you're right. It is easier for me to tell them that they can or cannot do this, and if they do, here's the consequences. It's harder to do for civilian drivers who are my neighbors, driving next to me as I watch them on the phone. It's frustrating, but obviously that's going to be a problem. But yeah, Phil, former police officer, he's seen the consequences of these crashes. Obviously, he's dedicated his life to safety training. So, that's is where our focus is now, and hopefully we can reach our fleet drivers, and then hopefully we can reach other drivers as well. I think we have more people that listen to this podcast than fleet drivers, so hopefully we're reaching a few people.
Well, I think it is safety issues like this. I think they are contagious. I mean, I think the fleet drivers, I'm sure they're probably huge advocates within their families. I think in a lot of ways, parents with young drivers are they do have a say as to how their young drivers drive, and they have the right to put driver monitoring cameras in young teen drivers or early drivers. So one by one, I think we can get many parts of the population that are driving vehicles, and eventually here, and hopefully quickly change behavior so that everybody realizes how important this is and how potentially dangerous it is.
That makes sense.
Well,
Phil, go ahead. Were you gonna add something?
Well, as you know, you mentioned, Steve. So you have the three pillars, but I think it has to be a multi-layer approach as far as with fleets and things like that, because you can't drive down the road and not see a fleet vehicle, a company vehicle. And I think that was brought up when we had our conversation with Mike Pitcher. There are a lot of them out there, and as you said, Steve, those people then maybe they're going home and saying to their kids, "Hey, you don't do this." So maybe they're educating them that way. But the parents are very, very important in this thing, right? I mean, I don't know too many parents who would say, well, you know what, you're drunk, go ahead and drive, it's okay. But yet that same parent will drive down the road using the phone right in front of that child. And that kid is a sponge. They're going to emulate that behavior. So it needs to start at the family level as well. They need to say, no, we just are not a family that are going to do this. I'll use this example. When I was a kid, I used to sit on the armrest in the front seat between my parents. And then I became a policeman. I started wearing my belt. When I became a reconstructionist, reconstructing car crashes, I absolutely total advocate. My kids would not allow somebody to get into the car without putting the belt on, and that was because of what my wife and I taught them. They wouldn't even think about driving down the road without the belt on. We need to get that same level with cell phone use. No electronics use. They shouldn't even think that that's okay. That's where we need to be. And it starts in the household.
Yeah, no, I think you're exactly right. And there's a number of great programs too that are targeting not just young drivers but like middle school. So let's call them passengers. We did a video contest a few years ago,
Good.
and we decided to select the winning video. It's actually kind of a cute, sort of catchy song with some sort of Muppet characters. And our idea was, if kids understand this, as in elementary and middle school, and I can't tell you how many times parents have told me, "Geez, you've really brainwashed my kid." And now I got my 10-year-old kid calling me out for touching my phone, and that's great. I mean, that's what we need, right?
Very similar to the DARE program back in the day, right?
Yeah,
Kids at school were taught about drug abuse and that sort of stuff. Well, they started going home and saying, "Hey, mom and dad, you guys are having a beer at dinner. Do you have a problem?"
right.
Maybe that's going to be effective.
I was just going to say when we were thinking about our phrase, and others have used it, but we really spent quite a bit of time, trying a few different phrases, and we often said, for those of sort of my age, we talked about Nancy Reagan and just say no, and that was kind of there was a generation, whether it worked or not, how effective it was, I don't know, but there's a lot of 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds now that will never forget just say no in their younger days, and we hope that just drive is as easy and as catchy. And by the way, we launched it a couple of months ago in the Middle East. So now we have Just Drive Arabia, which is traveling through Egypt and UAE and Saudi Arabia. And we have a team in Korea that's using the same thing. So we hope it becomes sort of a global simple phrase because as much as we talk about the 41,000 people killed here in the U.S., I mean, that number grows to about 1.3 million worldwide. So this is not a Michigan problem or a U.S. problem. It's a global problem, and we really have to make sure everyone understands it and starts to address it.
So, Steve, do you have a website that sells like Just Drive bumper stickers or that stop sign that you've been holding? Is there a way that we can help support people finding that message?
Yeah, we the sales piece of it isn't isn't really refined. We're a small little organization, but yeah, the website is mkiefer.org. That's Mitchel's honor, so M for Mitchell, and Kiefer is KIEFER.org. And you'll find a lot of videos. You'll find our three pillars. You'll find the work that we're doing there. You'll find some contact information. So it's we can definitely get. We've printed thousands and thousands of these paddles that we get out around the country and around the world, and there's some apparel and wristbands and so on. So if any of your listeners want to go to our website, we'll be glad to connect with them and find a way to get them what they need to help spread the message. I think it's I think it's reasonably effective, and that's just again one of the pillars in the spirit of awareness that we just gotta get the message out. There's a lot of what we found is that there are a lot of organizations out there, and there's a lot of different messaging. So we didn't want to create necessarily something new. The National Safety Council uses the same phrase, but we're trying to get rather than recreating all these different catchy phrases, just get everybody focused on one simple phrase and one let's get on with
Right.
creating the awareness and getting the legislation passed. The legislation, I'll just say, has been it's shocking how difficult it has been. I've been at it for 4 years here in my home state of Michigan, and the political gamesmanship. I mean, with people's lives at risk, it's just horrific. I mean, that 41,000 that we always talk about for the country, about in our home state here, there's about 1,000 each year in Michigan that are killed on the highways. And we know we could save I don't know 20-30% of those if we really had the right legislation and enforcement in place. Yet we've got legislators that are just not taking it serious. And we've got I think it's similar all over the country, but we polled the residents of Michigan. 88% of the residents in this state want this. They want these enforceable, effective, logical, hands-free legislation to make the road safer. Yet we got legislators that are just stalling, playing politics, and not getting it done. So that's kind of one of our big crusades and one of our big headaches. And hope that all your listeners, if they're supportive, they reach out to their state legislators, because these are state laws, these are state issues, and we got to go hand-to-hand combat in every state to get it done. And it's not easy, but boy, it's worth it when you get it done, because we know the same lives.
Yeah, it's disgusting to me, Steve, that this becomes politicized. I mean, how ridiculous! I mean, it's just ridiculous. It should not be politicized. People's lives are at stake, as you said. It's like enough with the politics. Just get it done.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up too, because I was going to ask, what are some of the roadblocks to getting this legislation passed? And unfortunately, that's one of them. Mike Pitcher was on our last episode, and he's been, trying to get legislation passed in Atlanta for a long time. It took forever to get that going, and it boggles the mind how it's so difficult to get that passed. So definitely, everybody listening to this or watching this, you know, talk to your legislators, go to your state,
Right.
tell them that you want this to be passed, and try and get it to happen, because it's crazy. We need it out there.
I'm glad you brought that up, because we worked with Mike and then some of the legislators in Georgia on what was referred to as hands-free Georgia. I work with an organization called StopDistractions.org. They work in every state on these, and it was very hard to get it done in Georgia. But I tell you, I mean, the data is incredible. In the month coming into the law being effective, the distraction rates just dropped completely. I mean, when you tell people that this is a behavior that's illegal and you're going to be fined and you're going to be ticketed and you actually have some enforcement plan, it's amazing how well it works. So Georgia's a great example. There's great data in all the states that have adopted these laws. So it's and as you said, I mean, it should not be controversial. I look at the way people are arguing about something truly controversial like abortion or marijuana or drug laws, and you say, okay, I get that there's kind of the country's divided on these things. You don't find anybody that says, "Hey, I'm fully supportive of distracted driving and killing people on the roads." Yet you still have people that just play politics and somehow come up with excuses to not get it done. And for me, it's just every day, right? Every day, another 50 people that because we didn't get this done today, another 50 people are going to die tomorrow, and it's just it's an awful thing to think about it that way.
We try and keep these podcasts to about half an hour, or we lose our our attention span of our listeners, which makes sense. Any closing words that you want to put out there, Steve? I mean, the message has been perfect. You have a lot of call to action there. Is there anything you just want to end with that you feel would be important?
Well, first, I just want to thank you for giving me the time to talk about this with you and with your listeners. I usually say, first and foremost, it's about personal accountability. I mean, it starts with you. I mean, you got to be willing to say, I'm going to be an example. I'm going to be a leader on this. I'm putting my phone away. and I'm going to then make sure that my loved ones, my kids, my spouse, and everyone I know does the same. And we're hoping that it'll be contagious. If we can get that first step done, that would go a long way. And then second, I would just say for people that are willing to put some effort into it, become an advocate and reach out to your legislators, because it even when we get the laws implemented, there's still a lot of work to be done on making sure that law enforcement has the tools they need to, and the number of people to actually enforce this. And much like your example with Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, a lot of times it probably wouldn't have worked back then if there wasn't a bunch of these women in the back of every courtroom saying, "You are not going to let this young person off. They were driving drunk, and someone just like them killed my child, and I'm not going to let it go." So there's all kinds of advocacy, and if your listeners are at all motivated by any of this, have them reach out to either mkiefer.org or one of the other fine organizations that are working on this cause, and get involved, because it's worth it. I just dread to think about the people who are waking up, losing a child tomorrow and saying, "Boy, I wish I'd have done more to stop this," because as we keep saying, I mean, every day there's another 50 families that are going to go through this, and it just the holidays coming, we just hate to think of it that way. So thank you for the time, and thank you to all your listeners for listening, and more importantly, getting involved and helping us correct this.
Yeah, well, thank you for your message. I appreciate that. Phil, do you have any final thoughts?
Just, thanks, Steve. I appreciate it, buddy. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you and your organization are doing. I would love to see it get to a point where, we talked about that technology. I'd like to see that technology be just standard equipment on cars as they come down the line, right? That as soon as you get in your car, your phone doesn't work. That'd be beautiful, right? And that's where we need to get, to something to that level. I'm just hopeful that if we just keep doing what we're doing here, Steve, Bob, maybe we can make a difference, and we can actually see this move forward. So thank you for all of your efforts, Steve. I truly do appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Yep. Yep. Thank you. And with that, I think we're going to sign off. Phil, thank you so much for partnering on this podcast. Steve, thank you for joining, and we'll help get your message out there.